So, hello Earthlings from an echoey office in the University College of Dublin, UCD. I thought I'd do another one of these YouTubey things and another one of the Tales from an Activist's Past. It's a short one. Please yourself. And a lot of people often comment that I often have a little bit of moisture in my eyes, and sometimes it actually looks like I'm crying. And this was a result of a time when I was on a demonstration. It was one of the famous Hillgrove cat farm demonstrations, which was a cat breeding establishment for vivisection. And it was closed down in the end. And the irony of this was that I'd been on hundreds of demonstrations in the 1980s. And on this occasion, I was in between my MA and my PhD. So I actually went there to do a bit of networking as an academic rather than a demonstrator. So I was literally observing, doing a bit of participant observation. I remember meeting Drew Keynes there, so you remember that. Hi, Drew. And yeah, it was weird because there was a time where there was part of the kind of fairly elaborate fence that they'd put around this farm. A part of that where the activists breached the fence, so there was a bit of a standoff, and I think some activists ended up with broken fingers and stuff. In fact, I think someone might have lost a finger in this kind of altercation that went on. And then there was a time where the police just kind of did a charge and pushed all the activists who were in front of me to one side. And then a wall of police shields came straight up to me. And they were encouraging us to go back, but we were a few deep, and there was like a drop, almost like a ditch behind, so we couldn't go backwards. And then suddenly, I just remember the shields parting, and this fist came out and hit me right there on the temple. And I just remember the sound of it more than anything, as much as the pain. It was just like an explosion, really loud. And what it was one of those police buttons that you can get. And so they've got a little cross piece, and then they can swing it to have a long one, and they can swing it to have a short one. It was a short one, and this guy hit me right there. And he broke my cheekbone in 4 places. In fact, if I run my hand along my eye socket, I can still feel the break. And so consequently, all the bone went in. And so after I got out of the hospital, I think I must have been, well, I was in North Wales at the time, so I went to the North Wales hospital doctors, and they recommended that I should have an operation. And what they were talking about doing is making an incision up here and inserting some kind of pallet or some kind of plastic thing to pull the bone back out. And the guy said, if you don't have the operation, you're going to have a bit of a caved-in face. So it was just at the start of when the internet was becoming quite popular. So I put this out on the internet saying that I'd been recommended this operation. And quite a lot of people got back and said, don't have it, because the operation can cause as much damage as anything, because the doctor said if you don't have the operation, I'll have like a caved-in face look. But they were saying that all the nerves will be cut and they can't be reattached, and so I would have like a droopy face on this side anyway. So it was kind of, if you like, no loss to not have it. So I decided not to have it, being a bit of a coward in that department anyway. So so I didn't have it, and I think it kind of gradually came back a little bit. It's not too caved in, but I think once you kind of point it out to people, they can kind of see the difference between the sides. But I'm getting a bit old and grizzled now, so it doesn't really matter, I don't suppose. And so I didn't have the operation, and that meant that because the bone went in, although I've asked doctors about this and they always deny this, but ever since this occurrence, I've had a problem with my nasal issues, you know, and so the kind of drainage doesn't kind of work, and my one of my tear ducts doesn't work either. In fact, they tried to open it once, really painful that was, and that didn't succeed. So one of my tear ducts is large, one of my tear ducts is small. Ironically, the large one doesn't work, so it's a kind of weird thing. So it was one of those kind of weird situations where you go along as an academic and you get beaten up by the cops. I got £4,000 in compensation. It was one of those situations where they offered you that compensation without admitting liability, that kind of stuff. And you were guaranteed that money, or you can go for years and years and years through the legal system. And you're not guaranteed anything. In fact, you might end up with court costs and all that kind of stuff. So, to consider whether I should challenge that or not, my lawyers subpoenaed all the police footage, of which there was a lot. It was a time of camcorders and stuff, including the helicopter one. The helicopter one was really interesting, in the sense that, you know, it was almost like the helicopter was, you know, where you look up in the sky and you can see this dot of a helicopter. But when we got the footage, you could see that they had, if they zoomed out, you could see the entire farm. It was really big, kind of landscape kind of scene. But then they could zoom in onto an individual. So it's an absolutely incredible zoom on this machine. And, you know, this is years ago as well. So I imagine the technology is even better nowadays. And the weird thing about that is that the melee where this thing happened was one of the scenes when they'd zoomed in. And just before I was about to get injured, it zoomed back out again, so you couldn't see what had happened. And then there was another angle where the problem was when I got hit, I went down and I had like a duffel coat on. And so my hood came up. So there's a scene where I'm coming back up again, but it looks as though I'm wearing a hood and a mask, which is like an illusion because I wasn't wearing the mask, but a lot of activists were. And so the lawyers said, well, you know, in that case, they're going to claim that you were there as an activist and that you were causing trouble and all the rest of it. And so consequently, there was the general idea that the court case would fail. So I took the compensation of £4,000. So another tale of an activist's past. This is Roger Yates signing out. Roger and out. And I'll see you again, probably from a less echoey place next time. Bye for now.